Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to be working on solving equations in one variable by applying inverse operations. Inverse just means to basically undo the operations you see. In order to solve equations, you also need to know how to combine like terms and how to use a distributive property. So we're going to start with a basic problem. We have 4x plus 1 equals negative 11. Remember, at the end of this problem, since we're solving for x, your goal is to have x equals some number. So you're going to want to have all of your variables on one side and all of your numbers on another. So you're going to need to get rid of any numbers bothering the variable. So if you take a look at where the variable is, it's on the left. So I'm going to try and get just the variable on this side and move all of these numbers over to the other side, which would be the right side of the equal sign. Okay. So first thing I'm going to need to get rid of is this 1. So this says 4x plus 1. Now, in order to get rid of it and move it to the other side, you need to remove it from the left side. How do I remove plus 1 from this side? You have to undo a plus 1. Undoing addition is done by subtraction, because if you have plus 1 and minus 1, that would give you 0, so there'd be no more 1s on this side. But whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side of the equation as well, the other side of the equal sign, because you need to keep the equation equivalent or balanced. Okay, so if I do that, I have plus 1 and minus 1, which gives me 0, which I could write, but I don't have to. So really, those are going to cancel out. Those are going to cancel out. And then what's left on this side is the 4x. Okay, then I have negative 11 minus 1. So it's like you have negative $11. You're in debt $11. And somebody takes one more away, which would make you in debt $12. Or you can think about this on a number line. Here's 0, yada, yada, yada. Here's negative 11. You're going negative one more time, which would put you at negative 12. However you want to think about negative numbers, use that example. So now I have 4x equals negative 12, but my x still isn't alone. So that 4 there is bothering the x, which is, if it's written 4x, that really means 4 times x. To undo that, I need to divide by 4. Again, the reason this works is because 4 divided by 4 is just 1 x. Now, do I really need that 1? Not really. So I'm just going to erase it. So you have x equals negative 12 divided by 4, which is negative 3, which would be my final answer. Now, when you solve for x, you should always know if you got 100%, because you can always check your answer by plugging in your solution to the original equation. So if I check, which I'm going to do off to the side here, and you should as well for every problem, I would do 4 times x, but I said x is negative 3. So it's 4 times negative 3 plus 1, and that should equal negative 11. Well, 4 times 3 is 12, but it's negative 3, so it's negative 12. Plus 1 should give me negative 11. So really what this says is I'm in debt $12, but then somebody gives me $1, which means I'm only in debt $11 now. So I have negative 11 equals negative 11, which is a true statement, and since this is true, you know you did it correctly. Okay, so that's an example that's pretty basic. What I want you to do right now is pause the video. Don't cheat. I want you to solve this equation on your own, and I'll come back with the answer worked out. Are you pausing yet? If not, do that now. Okay, so the point of trying this problem on your own was to see how well you're doing. If you got x equals negative 2, great, you did it correct. If you did not, go back through your work and see what you did wrong. So the first thing you have to undo is this minus 5. To undo subtraction, you use addition. So minus 5 and plus 5, there'll be 0 5s on this side. But whatever you do one side, you got to do the other. So I have to add 5 to 1, and I get 6. Then I have negative 3 times x. To undo that, you divide by negative 3. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1, which is why those cancel. And then you have to divide the other side by negative 3 as well. 6 divided by negative 3 is negative 2. Okay, so see if you made any mistakes, how you can correct them for next time. If you don't want to take my word for it, again, you can always check your answers. So I should have negative 3 times negative 2 minus 5 equals 1. Negative times a negative is a positive. 3 times 2 is 6, so negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6, minus 5 equals 1. 6 minus 5 is 1. 1 does equal 1, so that's true. I know I did it correctly. Okay, we're going to move over here to level 2. The difference between level 1 and 2 is you have multiple places where there are variables. So the good news is nothing's going to change. Your end goal is to get variables on one side and numbers on the other. The difference is you'll have to do another step. Okay, so my first goal is I'm going to try and just get all my variables on one side. So you have a 2y and a 3y. I can either move the 3y over here, or I can move the 2y over here. It doesn't matter what you choose. Okay, now in order to undo plus 2y, I would have to subtract 2y from both sides. Okay, or you have a positive 3y here, so that 3y is being added to the 36. You can subtract 3y here and move the 3y to that side. It doesn't matter which side the variables go on. I might recommend subtracting the 2y because I'd prefer to do 3y minus 2y than 2 minus 3y because I'll get a negative. So personal preference, but I'm going to subtract that from both sides. So 2y minus 2y, I have 0 y's left on this side. And then I have 3y minus 2y here, and I get y here. And then that 36, just plus 36. Okay, so if I'm choosing to get variables on the right, I'm going to want to get my numbers on the left. Now to do that, this is y plus 36. Okay, to undo that, I need to subtract 36 from both sides. Addition and subtraction undo each other. Okay, so I will have y equals 6 minus 36. So this says I have $6 and you take away $36. So if I only have 6, I'm going to be in debt, and I'm going to be in debt negative $30. So I would get negative 30 equals y. And if you want to check to see if you've done it correctly, you can always plug it back in. So I have 6 plus 2 times negative 30, scroll over here, equals 3 times negative 30 plus 36. Okay, 6 plus 2 times 30 is 60, so this would be negative 60, because there's a negative there, equals 3 times 30. 3 times 30 is 90, and since it's a negative, it's going to be negative 90 plus 36. Okay, 6 plus negative 60. It's like I have $6 and you take 60 away. Sad day. I'm going to be in debt. I'm going to be in debt $54, negative 54. And I have negative 90 plus 36. Well, negative 90 and 30 gives me negative 60, and then another 6 is negative 54. You can check this in your calculator if you're not sure. But this does work. I get a true statement, so I know I solved it correctly. Again, I did one with you, so I'd like you to try this one on your own. Again, pause the video. No cheating. I'll come back with the answer. Okay, so again, check yourself, see if you got the same answer as mine. If you did it correctly, you should get k equals 17. If you didn't get this, go back through and check why. So again, you can move variables and numbers to either side. I decided to move all the variables to the left this time because it doesn't matter. So in order to move this k over, I have to undo it. So this is plus k. I have to subtract k from both sides. So 3k minus k is 2k. And then I have minus 10 still, and it still equals 24 because all I did was move the k over. Now I got to move the numbers to the other side. So to undo minus 10, I added 10 to both sides. I get 2k equals 34. Now I had a 2 in front of the k, 2 times k. To undo that, I have to divide by 2. Whatever you do to one side, do to the other. You get k equals 17. And as always, you can check it. So 3 times 17 minus 10 should equal 24 plus 17. You can just do this computation in your calculator to confirm that it is in fact the correct solution. Next level involves the distributive property. So before you solve anything, you are going to have to take care of these parentheses here. So I guess we should talk about what is the distributive property. And I'll even kind of write it at the bottom of these notes here. Distributive property. So outside of math, think about what it means to distribute something. Like if I distribute t-shirts to all of you, I'm dealing out the t-shirts to everyone. So if you do that, everyone gets a t-shirt. And that's what the distributive property is in math. It's really like, and this isn't precise, but that's okay. It's like dealing out, quote unquote, multiplication. So everyone gets a multiplication. So for example, in this problem, I have negative 2 times n plus 2. And I'm going to write this down here so you have an example with the distributive property notes. So the n plus 2 in parentheses, that means it's a group. And it's saying you're multiplying by negative 2 to all of this group. So what you need to do is you're multiplying every member of the group by negative 2. So the n is a member, you're going to distribute it there. And the 2 is a member, you're going to distribute it there. So you're dealing out that multiplication to both terms. So let's actually do that here. I'm going to do that first. So I'll have to do negative 2 times n, which is negative 2 times n is negative 2n. Negative 2 times positive 2 will give me a minus 4. 2 times 2 is 4. Negative times positive is negative. Okay, and there's another distributive property in this particular problem, and you have the 5 is being distributed to everything in this group over here. So it's saying 5 is being multiplied by this whole group. The members of the group are the 2n and the minus 6. So you do 5 times 2n and 5 times minus 6. This n doesn't have anything distributed to it because it's just n, but the 5 is being multiplied by everything in these parentheses. Okay, remember when you write something right next to it means multiplication, that might help you remember how what operation to do. So it's 5 times 2n is 10n, 5 times negative 6 is negative 30. The most common mistake is to only multiply these numbers and not multiply the 5 to the 6. So I'm saying that now, so hopefully you don't forget to distribute to both terms in the future. And now this just becomes a one variable equation that you can solve using the steps we did above. So move your variables to one side, so on and so forth. And before we do that, if you look at the red side of the equation, you'll notice that we have n plus 10n, which says I have 1 n and I have 10 n's. How many n's do we have? So that would actually be 11 n's if you do what we call combining like terms. So you're not moving it to the other side of the equation or anything. You're just saying I have 1 n, I'm adding 10 n's. How many n's do I have? Now you can actually finally go ahead and move your variables to one side and your numbers to another. So I have a minus 2n. What undoes a minus or subtraction is a plus 2n. So I'm going to move my variables to this side over here. So those will cancel because you have minus 2 and plus 2. I have minus 4 equals 11n plus 2n is 13n minus 30. If you're going to move the variables over, you have to move the numbers to the opposite side. So I have minus 30. I'm going to add 30 to both sides because I have minus 30 and plus 30 will cancel. Okay, I know I'm running out of room here, but I have 30 and a negative 4. So it's like I have $30, but you take away 4. So I have $26 equals, those are gone, so I just have 13n. Everything else is the same. Now it's 13 times n. How do I undo that? I'm going to divide both sides by 13. Those cancel. All you have left is n, because 13 divided by 13 is 1. 26 divided by 13 is 2. So you get 2 equals n. You can go ahead and check that on your own. Do that on your own paper. I would also like you to try this problem here. And again, pause the video. I'll come back with the answer. No cheating. Okay, if you did this problem correctly on your own, you should get x equals 5. If you did not get x equals 5, use this as a tool to learn from your mistakes. So I have 2 times the group of 4x minus 3, which means 2 is being multiplied by everything in the group. So 2 times 4x is 8x, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, 34 stays the same because that 2 is not being multiplied by it. Now this becomes a one variable equation that we just get the variables on one side, numbers on the other. So I'm going to move this 6 over to the number side. So minus 6 and plus 6 cancel each other out. Whatever I do to one side, I do the other. You get 40. So I have 8x equals 40. 8 times x, you undo that, divided by 8. Divided by 8, you get x equals 5. All right, last one is our favorite. We're going to work with fractions. The good news is when you're working with fractions, nothing changes just because it's a different kind of number. A fraction is just like any other number. This is just like any other equation. This time I'm actually going to start with the second equation and leave the first one for you to try on your own. So I have x divided by 4 minus 3 equals negative 2. Rules still apply where you have to get variables on one side and numbers on the other. So since my variable's on the left, I am going to get my numbers on the right. So I'm going to move this negative 3 over. To undo a minus 3, I can add 3 to both sides. Okay, so minus 3 and plus 3 cancel out. I have 0 3's. So all that's left on the left is x divided by 4. I have negative 2 plus 3, which is like I have $3, and you take away 2, so I just have 1 left. Now this says x divided by 4 equals 1. So I have x divided by 4, whereas normally I'd have like 4 times x. And to undo multiplication, I do division. But here I have x divided by 4, so I'm undoing division. How do you undo division? You multiply. Okay, whatever you do one side, you do the other. So why does this work? I'm just going to go off on a tangent on the side here. So I have 4 times x over 4. 4 is really 4 over 1. Okay, because 4 divided by 1 is just 4. So it's the same thing. If it doesn't have a denominator, it's 1. And hopefully you remember back to multiplying fractions, you always multiply across the top and across the bottom. If I do that here, 4 times x is 4x. 1 times 4 is 4. And what's 4x over 4? It's just x. So that's why these cancel here, is because if you do this process, you just get x by itself. So I have x by itself here. I have to multiply this side by 4 as well. So 1 times 4 is 4. I get x equals 4. We're going to want to make sure we check this. So 4 divided by 4 minus 3 equals negative 2. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Minus 3 equals negative 2. That is true. So you know you've done it correctly. Try this one on your own as a challenge.